What's happening? A good Monday to all of you. Thanks for joining me. As always, it is very much appreciated. I'm going to try to not explode during this podcast. And I mean physically, my head to explode. I'm going to try my hardest to not allow that to happen. I am going to rip this football team. I'm going to rip the coaching staff. But before I get to that, I actually want to start with a bit of good news from yesterday's game. That awful game that we woke up to watch yesterday. And the good news was Drake Maye. So let me start with Drake Maye. Let me break down what we saw from Drake. I'll give you some analytics, some statistics that'll make you feel good. I don't want this podcast to be 100% Rip City, only about 90% Rip City. So let's start with Drake Maye. You have to feel good about Maye after watching him play the last 2 weeks. If you thought his first game against Houston was good, you have to believe his next game that we saw yesterday against Jacksonville was even better. And I thought Drake Maye was really good for most of this game. I thought Drake Maye was great in the first quarter. 8 for 10, 87 yards, 1 touchdown, in full command. In full command at the line of scrimmage. Extending plays, understanding what he's seeing in front of him, mostly accurate, diagnosing the defense. That touchdown to JaMycal Hasty was great quarterback play. He knows what he sees in front of him. He understands the blitz is going to come. He understands where the blitz is coming from. He understands that he can get Hasty one-on-one to the outside if he gets rid of the football quick enough. He gets rid of the football quickly to Hasty. Hasty has that one-on-one, makes a move, touchdown. That's what you want to see from your rookie quarterback. That's what you want to see from Maye. Not only the physical attributes that we talk about, the athleticism, the arm, all of that. You want to see this young man understand football. You want to see him understand the defense, what teams are trying to do against him, and how he can combat that. And that touchdown to Hasty was a perfect example of Maye understanding what was happening and reacting to it as the quarterback and reacting to it perfectly. You could just put that play right there on a mantle and say, he's learning. He's progressing. That's a step in the right direction. He was calm in the pocket. Thanks to the offensive line in part, which we'll get to. We were going crazy about the offensive line. Rightfully so. The offensive line through the first 5 or 6 weeks was not good, right? Last couple of weeks, they've been better. But I thought Maye was calm in the pocket. I did not understand why Alex Van Pelt went away from Drake Maye after that first quarter, which we'll get to. Because if I'm the offensive coordinator and I'm watching my young quarterback play at the level that he's playing at, we jump out to a 10-zip lead. I'm putting my foot on the gas. We're 1-5. We need this win. Jacksonville is not good against the pass. We talked about it last Friday. This defense was in perfect position to get beat down by the Patriots if they called the game correctly. Again, we'll get to Alex Van Pelt, but if I'm Van Pelt, I'm leaning into my young quarterback after watching him start this game the way he started it. That's not what happened, as we know, unfortunately. But I thought Maye was terrific in that first quarter. I thought he was pretty damn good in this game. I thought in the fourth quarter, when they got down a decent amount, then they decided to put the game more into the hands of Maye. I thought in the fourth quarter, Maye was pretty good. He gave Hunter Henry the one-on-one shot down the middle, right? Risky throw, but we talk about that. Those are throws that Maye is going to make. He's going to trust his guys. He gets that ball to Henry. Henry, great freaking play. Great catch. The Kayshon Boutte, second week in a row, Kayshon Boutte down the sideline, one-on-one coverage, bucket throw right over the top, perfect dime, great catch by Boutte. The Osborne touchdown, thought it was a great read, understood what was happening in front of him, chose the right option, zipped it in perfectly for the Osborne touchdown. So when Drake Maye was given a chance, I thought he made the absolute most out of his opportunities. And you walk away from that game yesterday, you can feel bad about mostly everything else. But you walk away from that game yesterday feeling, at least I did, even better about Maye than you did post-Houston. I thought he was really good. And the analytics back that up. Heading into Monday Night Football tonight, Drake Maye is 7th in the league in passer rating for Week 7. He's 9th in the league in completion percentage over expected. He is 6th. He is 6th in EPA. He is 6th in EPA per dropback. So when you look at the performance from Maye analytically, he was a top 10 quarterback on Sunday. And yes, again, it was an easier matchup for him than Houston, but you want to see him take advantage of those kinds of things, put up some numbers, and put the performance that we saw from him out there for the world to see. And it was the second straight week that Maye had to fight through adversity. Once again, we saw it. No run game, right? Ramondre Stevenson was out there, but he was a shell of himself. He had 7 carries, 18 yards, something ridiculous. They could not run the football yesterday. Stevenson couldn't run the ball. Gibson couldn't run the ball. Nobody could run the football. You're a one-dimensional offense. No run game. Bad play calling, which we'll get to with Van Pelt a little bit later, but Maye has to deal with bad play calling. Oh, and by the way, his best receiver, Pop Douglas, in a matchup that was perfect for them. We said it on Friday. The Jaguars, one of the worst, if not the worst teams against slot receivers in football. The passer rating was like above 128 going into that game yesterday. And your number one receiver, your slot receiver, Pop Douglas, guess what? He's sick. He's throwing up. He could hardly focus, he told Andrew Callahan. So you have no run game. You've got an offensive coordinator who is not doing a good job. You lost your best receiver for most of that game due to illness, so no Pop Douglas, a matchup that you could have picked apart all day long. You have offensive line pieces moving yet again. And there you are, right? Leighton Robinson goes out. You slide City So in. You've got all of this going on around you. Your first game in London. You got to get used to the schedule. I mean, there are so many reasons why Maye could have tapped out. There were so many reasons why your young quarterback could have failed yesterday, even with the really good matchup. But he didn't fail. He played even better than he played against Houston. With all of that going on, let's talk about the offensive line for a minute. Because for the second straight week, the offensive line was not an absolute train wreck in pass protection. We can talk about the run game and the issues there. But when you talk about continuity up front, a lot of that, especially with what Van Pelt wants to run with this run game, right? The idea of the zone runs and all of that. The way they want to run the football, getting continuity up front is pretty vital. The communication between the guys up front, understanding what one is going to do, right? You heard Joe Thomas during that game yesterday. He mentioned it a bunch. That's one of the best left tackles we've ever seen play the game of football. And Thomas was in that broadcast booth yesterday in London telling all of us, if you don't have that continuity up front, it's really difficult for an offensive lineman to find his rhythm, to get going, especially in the run game. But in pass protection, the last 2 weeks, and this is helped by Drake Maye. Don't get it twisted. Maye's ability to move around the pocket, to break contain, to extend plays, all of that helps the offensive line. The offensive line the last 2 weeks, they've done a good enough job. Silver lining, Evan Lazar wrote, on the initial charting data, the Patriots only allowed a 33.3% pressure rate in the loss to Jacksonville. A few three-man stunts got home, which has been a consistent problem. And again, the stunts, that talks about the communication, understanding what someone has to do and why they've got to do it and at what time. But the one-on-one blocking, Lazar wrote, seemed to hold up somewhat well this week. The initial pressure stats via Pro Football Focus, City So, who was not supposed to be playing, came in for Leighton Robinson. He gave up 3 hurries. Leighton Robinson, who left, gave up 2 hurries. Trey Jacobs, left tackle, gave up 2 hurries. Michael Jordan, left guard, gave up 2. And then you had Ben Brown and Michael Wenu giving up 1 pressure each. Taylor Kyles tweeted out today, per Pro Football Focus, Patriots have allowed pressure on fewer than 40% of dropbacks 2 weeks in a row, which had not happened in any other game. Their 7.1% knockdown rate allowed was nearly half their previous season low of 12.5% versus the Seattle Seahawks. So the offensive line, the pass protection has been better. Maye helps that, no doubt. But these guys up front, they've gotten better the last couple of weeks versus what they were before the first, month, 5 weeks of the season. And we can chalk it up somewhat yesterday to the matchup because, as we talked about, the pressure rate from Jacksonville isn't great. They're not awesome at rushing the passer. they're towards the bottom of the league when it comes to that. But you can certainly look at the Houston game, a defense that does pressure the quarterback, one of the best pass rushes in football, and the offensive line, along with Drake Maye, did a pretty good job. And I think looking at Maye and figuring if you had your starting offensive line out there, we would not have had the ultimate disaster that we saw through the first 4 weeks, 5 weeks, if the last 2 weeks are any kind of indication. But at least we see the last 2 weeks, the offensive line, that pass protection is better. Drake Maye has more time. He's had cleaner pockets. It's good to see, if not great to see. Now, it wasn't all awesome for Drake Maye. He did have 2 turnover-worthy plays. He got away with 2 passes that could have been picked, one that was essentially picked but ripped out by the receiver, and he had 1 in the red zone. I don't know if that was a miscommunication, a back shoulder. He was looking for Austin Hooper. He's fortunate that Cisco did not pick that pass off. So it wasn't a flawless performance. But as we've talked about with Drake Maye, you're not going to get flawless performances. You're going to have some of those plays. You're going to have some of those throws. You're going to have some of those misses. He probably had 4 or 5, maybe even more misses on his throws yesterday. You're going to have to live through that. It's part of the development process. It's also part of who Drake Maye is. Right now, at this point in his career, he's going to miss some throws. And you have to be ready for that because he's also going to make plays. He's also going to extend plays and find Hunter Henry in the middle of the field like he did yesterday. He's going to make those kinds of plays. He's going to make those kinds of bucket throws down the sideline to Kayshon Boutte. He's going to make those plus plays. You just want the plus plays to eventually outweigh the negative plays. And with the eye test, I think Maye did that yesterday. Now, I haven't gone through the game. I haven't watched the all 22, but just watching that game yesterday, it felt like there was more good from Maye than bad. And against Houston, it was more bad than good, maybe at best even. So it's a step in the right direction. I am legitimately excited about his play. I think you should be excited about his play. I'm not telling you that he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I'm not telling you he's going to be a top 5 quarterback in the league. All I can tell you is this. The first 2 weeks, the first 2 starts of Drake Maye's career have gone pretty damn well, all things considered. He got better in week 2 from week 1. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But I think it's absolutely allowed for all of us to look at one of the things that's actually exciting about this football team and that you can feel good about right now. It is perfectly fine to feel good about Drake Maye and feel optimistic about the young man after what we've seen the last 2 weeks. All right. So that's the good. I gave you 13 or so minutes of good football talk, optimistic football talk. The rest is not going to be good. The rest is going to be borderline brutal. I warn all of you. But if you have come here to vent, you have come to the right place because the rest of this podcast is going to be laying the wood on this coaching staff and what we've seen. But before I get to that, couple of things. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It takes a second of your time. Doesn't cost you any money. You just click that thumbs up watching the YouTube channel and you help us out. That's how we beat the algorithm. So make sure you click that thumbs up, you give us the like, and throw a comment in. How do you feel about Drake Maye? What'd you make of his performance, his second start of his NFL career against that Jacksonville defense? Let me know how you feel about Maye. Are you optimistic? So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers, hopefully by Thanksgiving. We're less than 500 away. So like, comment, subscribe. And if you are one of the fortunate that listen on demand, Spotify, Apple Pods, don't forget you can rate and review. One other thing I want to get to is Thursday nights, 7 o'clock is my NFL podcast. So if you like what we do here with the Patriots, I hit 5 of the top storylines in the NFL every Thursday night at 7 p.m. And I have a beverage while we do it. So whether you're drinking water, Diet Pepsi like our friend Terry does, or you're drinking beer, wine, whatever. We have a beverage on Thursday nights, 7 p.m. right here at this channel, and we talk NFL. So if you want to check that out, be my guest, be my guest, be my guest. All right, couple super chats before we get to venting. Let's go to Anthony Bennett first. $5 super chat. Thank you, Anthony. Tired of Mayo always walking back his words. His words are going to be falling on deaf ears soon. Calling out players and not self/coaches is weak. I think he has called out coaches. He called out the offensive scheme a couple of weeks ago. I don't think he's been as strong calling out DeMarcus Covington, which is interesting because he's friends with Covington. He's worked with Covington. He has a relationship with him. Van Pelt, of course, coming from outside the organization. Mayo had no relationship with him, so it's obviously easier to go after Van Pelt than it is Covington. And Mayo has said on a few occasions, he said it earlier today, that it's all on him. So he has tried to take accountability. But as far as the walking back and stuff, I agree with you, Anthony. I agree with you wholeheartedly. You come out, you call your team soft yesterday, and then you say today, well, they're not a soft team. They're just playing soft. And there's been way too many examples of that kind of stuff. And it's irritating and frustrating. And he's got to say less because he obviously cannot responsibly talk from his gut without putting his foot in his mouth and then retracing. So I agree with you. And I don't buy this thing. I saw a tweet from somebody saying, oh, well, now you know why Bill Belichick said nothing. Look, we can have a balance, can't we? Like, just because Mayo is on the other extreme doesn't mean that everything that Belichick did was right when it came to the media and how he handled things. It wasn't like Belichick was captain accountability. He hardly ever took accountability for the roster, right? He's always dancing around that kind of stuff, especially the last couple of years when the questions grew. But there's a middle ground here. I mean, you don't have to snort and be angry and say nothing during your press conferences and take almost no accountability. But you also don't have to be over the top like Mayo is and put your foot in the mouth all the time. Like, we've had two extremes the last 2 years. Chris Chapman jumps in. Nick, it sounds like you are letting AVP and Wolf off the hook. My friend, wait, Chris, wait. May playing pretty good is not good enough for AVP to be the OC. I'm with Tony. Demote him and go with McAdoo. You will quickly change your mind about AVP and me letting him off the hook. I have certainly not let him off the hook the last few weeks. I've been all over AVP. I have criticized him, since the first month of the season because I wanted to be fair to him somewhat. He hadn't played, he hadn't called plays for 15 years. I wanted to give him a month or so to get his feet warm, so to speak, get in the pool, but he's been brutal. And I'll get into that. As far as Wolf, we will have a full strip down of Elliott Wolf and what happened when the time is right. And for me, Week 7 is not right. And I'll tell you why, Chris. There's a difference between coaches and GMs. When Elliott Wolf got the job, his number one priority is to set this football team up for success for the future. He's focused on the long term. So when you do that, most of it, as he has said, they're going to be a draft and develop football team. Whether you like it, I like it, it doesn't matter. That's what they're going to have to do in his eyes. So Elliott Wolf is mostly going to be judged off the draft and what the draft gives to this football team. And I'm not going to judge or evaluate a draft after 7 weeks. I think that's insane. I don't even evaluate draft classes until 2 years, because how many times have we seen somebody come in during their rookie season be absolutely lost? Then by the end of the rookie season, they start to play better. And then by the end of year 2, they are much better than they were the first half of their first season. And so for me, I'm going to have more patience for Elliott Wolf because I want to see how this plays out. What he was given, especially on the offensive side of the football, that's at least a 2-year rebuild. At least. So to judge him 7 weeks in, I think it's tough. Now, the AVP, there are things that you can criticize. AVP was his call. AVP was his hire. And if Van Pelt continues to fail as bad as he has failed, it's obviously a terrible move by Elliott Wolf. But Elliott Wolf also hired Ben McAdoo. So if they go, as you said, if they go to Ben McAdoo and the offense plays better, then yes, it's a criticism for bringing in AVP, but do you get credit to have the Ben McAdoo insurance? As far as a lot of the other things, I want to see how the season plays out. Coaching is different. It's a week-to-week situation. You are evaluated as a head coach, especially on what you do week to week. I'm not saying either of these guys are going to be great or failures. I'm not saying that. Through the first 7 weeks, Jerod Mayo has been a failure. There's no doubt. There's no doubt about it. Elliott Wolf's offseason is also a fail right now. But again, the vast majority of that offseason is going to be dependent on the draft. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the draft was a massive miss 7 weeks in. 2 of the top 4 picks in that draft have been hurt. They haven't been able to get on the field. Drake Maye has looked fine. I think we're all excited about Drake Maye. As far as Jalen Polk, I believe Jalen Polk will be okay. I think he's going through some mental things, some mental hurdles as far as, not personally, but professionally. And I still think Jalen Polk is going to be a good NFL receiver. So I'm not going to sit here and kill a draft 7 weeks in. I'm just not going to do it. So I'm going to give Elliott Wolf, I've said this from the very beginning, he's got 2 off seasons to set this thing right. Now, Jerod Mayo, you've got to make the most out of what you have. And I'm not asking for a lot from Mayo. I'm really not. But there's been some incompetence here as far as simple coaching things. So that's the difference to me between GM and head coach. At the end of the year, we'll be in a better spot to say, oh man, Elliott Wolf swung and missed on all of these guys and went terrible, right? But we don't know. Sione Takitaki goes out there and plays well. It'll look like a great signing once he's healthy, right? If Jalen Polk gets out of these mental things going on in the second half of the year, the last quarter of the year, he's much better, and we feel like he's a number 2 receiver, you go, wow, it looks like they hit on that pick. If Drake Maye continues to improve and progress through the year, you go, man, the most important thing was nailing that pick, and it looks like they nailed that pick. Does Javon Baker get on the football field? Does Vidarian Lowe ever get healthy? Do we see the starting offensive line, or at least a semblance of the starting offensive line? So there's a lot that goes into it. A lot. Kyle Kirk jumps in, says, Mayo is soft. 7 straight games of regression. Record aside, rebuilds need progress. This regime has not gotten anything out of this roster. Change it. I'm not changing a regime 7 weeks in, Kyle. I get the frustration. I understand. I am not happy. You're not happy. Nobody's happy. Again, I'm going to rip the coaching staff in a minute or so. But 7 weeks in is way too quick, okay? He's a first-time head coach. And yes, I want to see progress. And yes, it's incredibly frustrating that we see the same mistakes made over and over and over again. I understand it. But I did not go into this season saying this is an 8-week, 10-week trial period for Jerod Mayo. Let's see what happens over the next 10 games. Let's see how this develops. Do they make the move from AVP to McAdoo? Does Drake Maye's play get better as he goes? Do they develop the young quarterback? And you feel good about that. So let's see where this is. It doesn't mean you can't criticize. Again, you can criticize Elliott Wolf for certain moves right now. It doesn't mean that it's an absolute mess. We got to see how it unfolds. And I know it's tough to say. But we can criticize in the moment the coaching because you can do something about the coaching right now, right? That's the difference. That's another difference. Like Elliott Wolf, the offseason's the offseason. You can only do so much in season. You can only pick up waiver wire guys. You can only try to trade for people, and that's very unlikely. You're in the season right now. Can you fix certain things? And so that's what we've got to look for. Can this coaching staff fix certain things? Because so far they haven't. Thank you for the 5, Kyle. It's much appreciated. Because so far they haven't. They just haven't done it. They really have not shown up and improved this team much from week to week. Greg Fields, I promise I'll get to the coaching staff, but I got to get to the super chats. What do you think of Bill Belichick throwing shit at the coaching staff when he himself takes no accountability? Yeah, look, Greg, I saw the comments today about the team's not soft. I coached those guys. I have an issue with Belichick kind of parading around with his chest out, honestly, after what we saw the last 4 seasons, what we saw post Brady. Like, to me, again, it's just I don't expect humility from Bill Belichick. in the first 20 years, I've gone through this, but I'll throw the disclaimer out there just in case somebody's watching or listening for the first time. I'll throw the disclaimer out there. I appreciate Bill Belichick's first 20 years. He was unbelievable. He's a Hall of Famer. He's the greatest defensive mind in football history. We should all appreciate and take pleasure in what that guy brought here for 2 decades, he and Tom Brady, okay? But post-Brady, it was a disaster. And I don't need to hear from the guy who won 4 games with this team last year out there proud as a peacock as if he won 10 games last year. I don't need to hear it. Like, he had a losing record post-Brady. It is what it is. They got to the playoffs once, and they got absolutely murdered in that playoff game against Buffalo. So I just, after a 4-win season, if it were me, I wouldn't be running around saying, like, oh, yeah, they're not soft. Like, I don't think it's time for a victory lap for Bill. That's just my personal opinion. David jumps in with the 5. RKK hired Mayo on feelings. AVP was like the 5th choice. I think it was more like the 11th or 12th. What OC wants to work for Mayo? Wolf needs the chance to hire top to bottom. This is a great point by David. And, you know, again, I don't want to make this entire podcast on the Wolf stuff and all of that, okay? Because, again, I think you've got to judge GMs off the offseason they had. And I think I want to see, especially they're going to be draft heavy. I want to see how this draft plays out. And I want to see how these guys improve, if they can improve throughout the year. But what David says is it's true. You know, Elliott Wolf, here's the thing. Robert Kraft hired Mayo the way he hired him. I disagreed with then. I disagree with it now. There was no process. It was fakakta. It was fakakta from the beginning. He made the decision in 2019 when Mayo did not coach a single game in the NFL yet that guy was going to be the next coach of the New England Patriots. He made a choice that he was going to be the next head coach because of an airport meeting that he set after an Israel trip. And to me, it just screams personal decision by Robert Kraft and not necessarily looking at who Gerard Mayo is and what he could be as a coach, and especially a head coach. Once Robert Kraft hired Gerard Mayo, and of course, it was in the contract, which is another mistake. They put it in the contract because they were afraid of losing Mayo to another team as the defensive coordinator. So they literally put it in Mayo's contract that he was going to be the next guy in line, which to me is a ridiculous decision. But as soon as you made Mayo the guy, as soon as you made Mayo the next head coach, all the dominoes fell. Why? We talked about this, and I want to get to the coaching yesterday, but David brought it up, and he brought the super chat in. So I'm going to answer the question, and I'm going to talk about what he brings up. As soon as you named Gerard Mayo the head coach, we talked about this. You can go back to the archives of this podcast that we did during the offseason. Just like I said, I'm going to give, Mayo time, and I'm going to give Elliott Wolf 2 off seasons to prove that he can put this team together. I've said all of this months and months ago. This is not hindsight. And when Mayo was brought in, we talked about this. You have 2 ways to develop a football team if you're the owner, right? You either hire the head coach first or you hire the GM first. I am in favor of hiring the GM first and allowing the GM to pick his head coach, and then his head coach picks his staff. It was completely back-asswards here in New England this offseason because Mayo had it in his contract that he was the next guy. So as soon as Mayo was the head coach, now you're going off of Mayo. And you say to yourself, who does Mayo have a relationship with? Well, he has a relationship with Elliott Wolf. So you don't go through the GM process because you didn't go through a head coach process. So as soon as you named Mayo the guy, Mayo was going to have somebody, and he should have somebody on his right side that he trusts and has a relationship with. That guy was Elliott Wolf. And then you get to the coaching staff, and Gerard Mayo has 0 network. He has not left New England, okay? It's not like Mike Vrabel, who I wanted. You can go back. The one guy I would have taken absolutely before Gerard Mayo this offseason was Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel has a network of people. He worked at Ohio State, right? Head coach down in Tennessee. He's moved around. He was down with the Houston Texans. He has a network of people around the league. If Mike Vrabel comes in, he comes in with a coaching staff of guys that he's worked with before that are experienced, that he knows what he's going to get out of them. But because you decided to go with Mayo, Mayo did not have a network. The only people he knew were guys from New England. And guess what? A lot of those guys want to go work for Bill. And a lot of those guys aren't going to hang around. Bill O'Brien said it himself. Mayo has to pick his own staff. He has to have his own guys. He's going to, it's weird. It would be incredibly weird to just take Bill Belichick out of the equation and plop Gerard Mayo in, and the entire coaching staff stays the same. It would be awkward. If you put McDaniels in as offensive coordinator, if you're off to a slow start, what do you think would be happening right now? People would be yelling that Josh McDaniels should be the head coach of the New England Patriots. So all of it trickles down from the initial decision by Robert Kraft in the fakakta process of making Gerard Mayo the head coach. Because as soon as you did that, all of the other things fall into line. You pretty much are now putting yourself in a bind at GM. And I think Elliott Wolf deserved the job. He has the resume for the job. But you knew once you put Mayo there, you got to have somebody that was in that front office that he knew, had a relationship with. You weren't going to bring somebody from the outside in that Gerard didn't know and then turn over the entire front office. And then you had a coaching staff that Mayo had to lean on Elliott Wolf to pick the coaching staff, at least some of them, including Alex Van Pelt. And that's not really what happens. Head coaches usually pick their coaching staff. So it was a situation where they were really behind the eight ball. Anonymous, should Mayo stop being a CEO, head coach, and take over the defense? I don't know if he should take over the defense, Anonymous, but he should absolutely take more responsibility on the defensive side. Because right now, Covington, and we'll get to it, not doing good enough. In Mayo, if he can help the defense, then he should put more energy towards the defense and let the offense, along with Ben McAdoo and Alex Van Pelt, let them figure out that side of the football and lean into what you're best at. The CEO thing doesn't work out as well when you don't have experienced coaches, experienced coordinators. All right, let's get to the coaching now, okay? Thank you for all the super chats. I appreciate every single one of you. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review to this podcast. Let's start with Mayo. Let me ask you this. What has this coaching staff fixed other than adding the much more talented Drake Maye at quarterback? From week 1 to yesterday, what has this coaching staff done well? It's a legitimate, genuine question. I'm not trying to be a smartass. What has this coaching staff improved? Is there one thing they do better now than they did week 1? Aside from the quarterback switch, is there anything that they do better? I honestly can't give you an answer. Can you honestly come up with an answer? Do they run the football better? I mean, I guess you could say maybe pass protection, but that also, again, as I said earlier, has a little bit to do with Drake Maye. But what do they do fundamentally better? Are they more disciplined? No. Are they less penalized? Not really. Are they disciplined on the field as far as, gap integrity, run fits against the run game, right? No. What have they fixed? And that's why, I'm not asking for a lot from Gerard Mayo. I'm honestly not. I've said this from the beginning. It's going to be a steep learning curve. We went through this the last couple of months. We went through this when he was hired. There's going to be a steep learning curve. I don't expect Gerard Mayo to know everything by week 7, first year in the NFL as a head coach. But I do want to see improvement. I want to hang my hat on something and say, well, they got better at doing that. Terry jumps in with a $50 super chat. Nothing. Yeah, nothing. From week 1 to what we watched yesterday, what does this team do better? I'm not asking for a bunch of things. I'm not asking for a list from Gerard Mayo. I'm asking for a couple of things. Thank you so much, Terry. The generosity, again, the $50 super chat. It is so much appreciated. Let's go over it. Has their run defense improved? No. Their run defense continues to suck. Has the clock management improved? No. The clock management has not improved. Did you enjoy again the end of the first half? You see what happened? The same damn thing. The same damn thing that happened against the Seahawks, the same damn thing that happened against the Dolphins, happened yesterday. Before the half, you got timeouts in the pocket, and you can't pick a lane. You run the football. You run the football on the first down. Guess what? It goes nowhere. Your running game's doing nothing. As soon as you run the football in that instance, you're waving the white flag, but not Van Pelt and Mayo, because we've seen this again against Seattle, against Miami. They run the football, and then they throw it on back-to-back downs. Guess what happens? The same thing that happened against Seattle, the same thing that happened against Miami. Now, fortunately, Behringer pinned the Jacksonville Jaguars. Doug Peterson said, we're going to go to halftime. We're fine. But again, you gave the football to the opposition with time on the clock and with them having timeouts because you mismanaged the end of the half. Gerard Mayo said, I'm not a repeat offender when he got this job. They are doing nothing but repeating the same mistakes. The end of the first half clock management has been a problem. That's the third time that they haven't picked a lane. You either play the clock or you play the game. If you play the game, you throw the football, you come out aggressive. If you play the clock, you run. When you choose to run the football, that's pretty much it. Yes, you're hoping that you can pop a 30-yard run. But did anybody think that before the end of the half yesterday, the Patriots were going to be capable of popping a 30-yard run? And we saw it again yesterday. Then late in the game, again, clock management. You take a timeout after the first stop against Jacksonville, right? You stop the run against Jacksonville. There's about 5 minutes or so left. You take a timeout. Once you take that first timeout after the first down play, if you stop them on second down, guess what? You take a timeout. They took a timeout after the first down stop. They stop them on second down. They don't call a timeout. They let 40 seconds go off the clock. What are we doing? What are we doing? We're not doing it right. The back-breaking flags, the penalties over and over and over again. Let me ask you another question. Throw it in the comment section. What's the identity of this football team? I've asked this question now the last few weeks. What's the identity of this football team? What do they do well? What do they try to do? We were told that this team was going to run the football. But before yesterday, when your run game was awful, they bailed on the run game when they were actually running the football pretty well in prior weeks. What is the identity of this football team? It's week 7. It's week 7, and we don't have an identity of the football team. It's a messy operation. And then you get the soft team stuff. Mayo comes out yesterday at the podium and he says this, quote, we're a soft team across the board. That's what Mayo said. We're a soft team across the board. And I said to myself, all right, he's calling the players out, right? That's his moment. The head coach just drew the line in the sand. We're a soft team. We're a soft team across the board. That's what he said yesterday after the game. Then he goes on Greg Hill this morning on WEEI and says, we don't have a soft football team. We're playing soft. Beep, 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 beep. He's backing up the truck. He's moonwalking like Michael Jackson. Hee. Like, what are we doing here? You just said yesterday that your team is soft across the board. You made a statement. You called your team out. And then less than 24 hours later, you're on local radio saying, we don't have a soft football team. We're just playing soft. Did you realize that you stepped in it, Gerard? Did you realize that you said a little bit too much when you called them soft? You might have pissed off the locker room, and because of that, now you're backtracking? Certainly seems like that's the case. If you're going to say something like that, like you said yesterday, then you have to stand by it. Because if you fold in less than 24 hours, then it doesn't matter what you say. If you call somebody out, it's not going to matter. Messaging is a problem. Discipline is a problem. Alex Van Pelt. Let's get to him. Great script. This is not being sarcastic. I'm actually clapping for Alex Van Pelt's script yesterday. I did not think that you could script the first 15 plays or so of a football game better than Van Pelt did. Honestly, with the quarterback that he had, he relied on play action. He moved Drake Maye around, right? In and out of the pocket. He manipulated the pocket with his quarterback. He called a perfectly timed screen to Antonio Gibson. He called a perfectly timed gun run. But then what happened? As soon as the script is over with, you know what we're learning? That as soon as and I'm not talking about, success, because people will sit there, they'll talk about the results, right? I know multiple people tweeted at me saying, yeah, Nick, but that's the first time they scored points on the first drive of a game. I understand that. I'm talking about conceptually. Conceptually, going into a game, the script makes a lot of sense. You can't always account for players' execution. You just can't. But going into a game, the first 15 plays or so, Van Pelt, he generally has a really good plan going in for the first 15 plays. And we saw that yesterday. It made all the sense in the world. Moving around his athletic and mobile quarterback, working off of play action, right? And then what happened? What we see from Van Pelt is a guy that has been incapable of adjusting during a game, understanding the moment, understanding what his team is doing well, understanding what his team is not doing well, and adjusting off of that and getting the most out of his offense. We don't see that from Van Pelt, folks. We see a guy who goes in with the first 15 plays with a pretty good idea. And then the defense reacts to that. The defense starts to take away certain things, and Van Pelt is just on the sideline looking around. Yesterday, you come out, and the quarterback is playing great. Quarterback's playing great. And then you decide that you're just going to keep running the football into a wall over and over and over and over again. Just keep running the football into the wall. Andrew Callahan posted, the Patriots, 8.3% success rate when running the football yesterday. 8.3 success rate. That's not good. It's awful. Do you know what the Patriots' success rate rushing on first down was yesterday? That would be 0%. They did not have a single successful rushing play on first down yesterday. And how many times did they run the football on first down? Too many. Given those numbers, Patriots offense had 0 explosive plays before the fourth quarter. 0 explosive plays before the fourth quarter against a defense who gave up a number of explosive plays heading into this game, with a quarterback that's more than capable of creating explosive plays. And so people would shoot back at me. I had somebody tweet at me yesterday, and they didn't do it in like a Twitter-like engagement rage. They did it genuinely. They said, well, Nick, they can't run the football, so what do you want them to do? You know what I want him to do? Is try to run the football in different ways. If you watch yesterday's game, it's a lot of the same stuff, right? Running smack dab in between the tackles. Boom, boom, boom. Running into that Jacksonville wall. So if you're Alex Van Pelt, do some things differently to get the most out of your run game. Nick, what would you do? See, this is what we do with this podcast. We come prepared. There are a number of different things that Van Pelt could have tried yesterday, and he pretty much tried none of them. How about a toss play or two? How about a pitch play or two to attack the perimeter, right? How about a jet sweep with one of your receivers? If Pop Douglas is sick, give Kendrick Bourne a jet sweep. Try to attack the perimeter with a jet sweep and see if you can get a big play out of it. How about wide receiver screens? We always talk about this, right? If you're not capable of running the football, especially on early downs, you can replace the run game with safe, quick passes to the wide receivers that act as your run game. If you continue to run into the brick wall on the early downs, then throw a wide receiver bubble screen, right? Throw one of those tunnel screens. Get Kendrick Bourne. You did it against Houston. Throw one of those bubble screens to Kendrick Bourne. Try to get 5 or 6 yards on the first down, right? On that first down play. There's a lot of things that you can do. How about this idea? And we talked about this on Friday. You have a very mobile, athletic quarterback. Did you see any designed runs for Drake Maye yesterday? I can't remember one. Maybe there was one. But if your run game's not doing well, why would you not try to create conflict in the front seven of the Jacksonville defense by running some zone option, by running some read option from Drake Maye? How about you get him to pick up a first down? Caleb Williams ran for like 56 yards in week 6 against this defense. This defense is literally the worst defense against running quarterbacks. And there were almost no design runs. I can't remember one. So how about some designed runs with the quarterback to try to get your run game going? You have to try to throw wrinkles. How about taking a snap in the pony formation? How about you try Antonio Gibson and Ramondre Stevenson in the backfield and you run pony to try to throw off the Jacksonville defense? There was none of that. It was the same old, over and over and over again. We talked about Jacksonville's defense being incredibly undisciplined. There was not a single trick play called yesterday. There wasn't a single trick play called against that ridiculously undisciplined defense of Jacksonville. There should have been at least 2 or 3 trick plays called yesterday against that defense to try to take advantage and get a chunk play. There was nothing. There was no creativity. The first 15 plays, again, that script, you had motion at the snap. You were moving May a lot more. And then it went to, let's establish the run. I don't know what it was, 1950s play calling. I just gave you 6 or 7 different things that the offensive coordinator could have done in that game to try to get more out of the run game. And he did 0.0 of those things. He just kept doing the same damn thing over and over again, expecting different results. That's called insanity, folks. Now let's get to the defense. DeMarcus Covington, run defense again. I tweeted out that toy truck gif when it runs over the kid. That was the Patriots defense yesterday. Jacksonville ran the football on 22 of the last 23 plays. They just ran the football down their throat. Over and over and over again. We mentioned tackling on Friday's podcast, right? As we previewed this game, we talked about how yards after the contact, that's how Jacksonville's run game has survived a lot, and that's why their numbers are good. The Patriots had 10 missed tackles on 59 plays. So every 6 plays, you had a missed tackle from the defense. And as we know, this used to be one of the best tackling defenses in all of football. Last year, they were one of the best. Week 1, they were fantastic. They have sucked tackling the last 6 weeks. And they did it again yesterday. It's demoralizing. It's demoralizing when you're a defense and you're giving up those kinds of runs over and over and over again. It gets to be demoralizing. It should drive you crazy. And you should be finding ways to combat that. Just like when you look at the run game for the offense and you're doing the same things over again and you're not successful, same thing defensively. You continue to get run on and you have not been able to find ways to counteract that. You have not really adjusted at all. There are things you can do, folks. They don't look like they have any toughness against the run game, but there are things you can do. DeMarcus Covington, how about you call a couple of run blitzes? How about you move the defensive line? I was listening to Teddy Johnson yesterday on NBC Sports Boston, talked about stunting the line, moving the line. How about you say to yourself, we're going to put 6 guys on the line of scrimmage. We're putting 6 guys on the line of scrimmage because we have to stop the run. And yes, we might get burnt on the back end once, but we can't have this football team get run over play after play. So we're gonna put 6 guys at the line of scrimmage. We're gonna make a statement. You're not running the football against us. We have to stop this hemorrhaging. None of that. We saw none of it. Some of the same strategic mistakes from the defensive end, right? You're dropping Jelani Tavai in coverage. Doesn't work. Shocker. You're dropping Joshua Uche into coverage. Guess what? It didn't work. Shocker. We saw it again yesterday, the lack of discipline on the edge. Dietrich Wise is absolutely lost. I don't know what he's doing. He's floating around the middle of the field, and Trevor Lawrence, whoop, right on the outside, hits the edge. Boop, nobody there to contain the edge because Dietrich Wise is, I don't know what he's doing. He's walking around looking up at the sky. The lack of pressure. This team can't get any pressure. They can't simulate pressure. They can't blitz pressure. They can't get pressure on the quarterback. Yesterday, according to Alex Barth, the Patriots had no sacks, no quarterback hits. They had 2 pressures the entire day. They pressured Trevor Lawrence twice. This team got abused at the line of scrimmage in the run game on both sides of the football. and their defense couldn't get a pass rush going. And their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator did not do nearly enough to try to help this football team out. And if that's not bad enough, the locker room vibes aren't good. Tell you about that in a second. Don't forget to give us that thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. When you click that thumbs up, it means more eyeballs. It's engagement. So don't forget to give us those likes. Don't forget to comment how you feel about this coaching staff. Covington, Van Pelt, Mayo, throw a comment in. Even if you're watching on demand, you can still comment. It helps us against that algorithm. And don't forget to subscribe. Trying to get to 5,000 subscribers, hopefully by Thanksgiving. All right. One more thing I want to talk about before we go on this Monday. The locker room's a mess. Starting to get a little bit messy here. KJ Osborne ended up posting a conversation off his phone that he had with his agent about his playing time. I guess he wasn't supposed to play. He wasn't supposed to play on Sunday, and then they told him he was going to play. Maybe it was because of the Javon Baker illness, but they then told him he was going to play. He goes out there, he scores a touchdown, and he ends up posting on social media a conversation he has with his agent. Completely unnecessary, utterly ridiculous. If you watched him after the touchdown catch, which again was a nice play, great throw by Drake, he does the whole cell phone thing, like the call me motion. Now, I don't know if he was telling, the team to call on him to play more, or he was telling front offices across the league to call the Patriots so he can get the hell out of here. But that was a mess. Jalen Polk yesterday, dropping the football, falling to the ground on the 2-point conversion, and then he goes to social media with the peace, the 2-finger peace emoji, and then deleted that shortly after. What are we doing? Aquale, he discussed ego in the postgame. This is from Andrew Callahan. Aquale told reporters, Gerard just said in the postgame, everybody got to check their ego when they come in, and I agree with him. I feel like a lot of guys think too highly of themselves and have to check their ego and come in and just play as a team. I feel like if we play as a team, nobody can stop us. But if we go out there and do our own thing and play outside of the scheme, that's when we get beat. How many times have we heard this? Jabril Peppers. Obviously, he got his own issues now, but Peppers came out and said the team was selfish. Devon Gottschalk came out on the radio and said that the team was selfish. Now Aquale is saying there are some guys on this team that are playing selfish. And all of this is out there for the world to see and hear. Not ideal. Far from it. Multiple guys saying we got players on this team that are selfish. Kendrick Bourne also spoke. Bourne spoke to Andrew Callahan. He's talking about the game. He said the time zone was definitely a factor. That was a challenge. Maybe wake up earlier. Find ways to fight that adversity first. That's the first battle. Playing Jacksonville is the second battle. If we struggle to win the first battle, we're going to be struggling to win the second battle. That's how I felt. That's how I feel now, and we've got to be better in that area. Callahan asked Bourne, so how do you change that mentality? Bourne said, quote, that's personal decisions. Again, Bourne said, that's personal decisions. Rather than staying up all night or eating whatever. Interesting, right? So Kendrick Bourne, he's asked, how do you change the mentality of kind of being ready, earlier game? How do you get going? He says, personal decisions. How about you don't stay up all night? How about you don't eat whatever you want? Is he telling us that there are players that are staying up all night before a football game, eating whatever they want, not being prepared, not in the best frame of mind? Is that what Kendrick Bourne is saying? He continued, whatever it is, whatever makes us be better. We have to make those decisions to be better, so when we get to the game, we can be better. Callahan followed up, said, are you giving theoretical examples, or are you saying those things happen and guys aren't committed? Bourne said, yeah, I would say yeah. Yeah, there's certain things we need to figure out that's within. That's how the energy feels. There's something else that is contributing to us having low energy. Like we had good long drives, and that's when we need to play our hardest. But with those drives, we start to get tired. There's self-evaluating we need to do. I don't know who specifically. It's just as a group, it feels like that. Just how I operate, I can feel it. So that's just where I see we can be a lot better. So you got players saying that other players are selfish. You've got wide receivers who are going to social media immediately following games, complaining and crying. You've got Kendrick Bourne, somebody who is seen as a leader of this team and brings a great vibe to the locker room, saying guys need to be more professional pretty much. Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? Mayo desperately needs to get guys on the same page. This is a dumpster fire right now. And I wasn't asking a lot of this football team. I had them winning 5 games fully healthy. To me, it's not the wins and losses. It really isn't. Of course, you would like to win more games than you won last year. But this was never about wins and losses in 2024. It was about building it the right way. It was about improving throughout the year. It was about developing your young quarterback. So in 2025, we all feel confident that that guy is going to be a freaking stud. It was about the coaching staff improving as the year went on and showing us that they won't make the same mistakes, same bad decisions as a coaching staff. And we just haven't seen really any of that aside from Drake Maye giving us hope. Thank God. I'm not asking for much. I know where this team is. I know what this roster looks like. I know it was very difficult to try to sell free agents on this, craptacular 2023 season. I know it wasn't easy finding an offensive coordinator when you had nothing to sell the offensive coordinator on. I get it. I don't think it's too much asking for improvement to be competitive. And frankly, this team's not competitive. They got steamrolled by one of the worst teams in football yesterday. They got up 10-0 and then got embarrassed. They got beat by Houston by 20. It looked like Houston at times wasn't even trying in that game in the second half. They got humiliated by the New York Jets. Did you see the Jets last night with Devontae Adams? Did you see the Jets the week after against the Denver Broncos? I'm not asking for this team to win 10 games. I'm not asking for Gerard Mayo to look like the greatest coach of all time. I'm asking for some improvement. I'm asking for learning how to deal with the freaking clock management. I'm asking for some adjustments from the coordinators when you're getting killed over and over again with the same stuff. I'm not asking for a lot. I think my demands are reasonable. Compete. Show some toughness. Show that you can actually adjust in-game every once in a while. I don't think that's a lot to ask. I honestly don't. All right. I appreciate every single one of you. We've gone for almost an hour. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Rate and review over at Spotify and Apple Pods. Hopefully this dumpster fire gets rectified eventually. And we'll be back on Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. And I'm sure we'll talk about Alex Van Pelt and some other things. Who knows what's going to happen over the next, 46 hours or so. Anything can happen the way things are going right now. So back on Wednesday. Appreciate you. Thank you for all the super chats. And talk to you soon. This has been the Nick Cattle Show.